What's the worst physical pain you've ever felt? Abscessed tooth. But wait, let me finish. Abscessed tooth after the dentist removed the wrong tooth, the one next to the abscessed tooth, on the way home when the local wore off. So a lot of people are asking about lawsuits. Unfortunately, that was not an option. This was a low-income state-sponsored thing that the dentist volunteered for, and part of getting them to volunteer was a no-liability sort of thing. Plus, at the time, I kind of figured I had probably explained which tooth wrong rather than him just pulling the wrong one. I'm guessing I probably could have held the state liable, but at the time I was much younger and not very savvy, so I never pursued it. I've noted a couple of people say that kidney stones are more painful than abscessed teeth. Now I've had kidney stones, and I'm guessing you didn't let me finish. Also, abscessed teeth can vary in pain intensity, as can kidney stones. Anyways, I can't keep up with all the replies to save my life, but I appreciate the discussion from everyone. Story 2. I had a dentist use medication I am allergic to, and then break the molar, leaving shards in my mouth. I was screaming like I was being murdered, and the guy wouldn't stop. Husband dang near bulldozed his way through the door trying to get the dentist to stop. He left the infected root and tooth parts in, packed in gauze, and kicked me out. Had to go to a 24-hour emergency dentist at 3 a.m. because it wouldn't stop bleeding or hurting. Dentist gave me a different medication, waited until I was fully numb and relaxed, removed everything in a few short minutes, gave me medicine, and I was able to handle without issues. Second was a doctor in the south-northwest suburbs area of Chicago, removed 4 of my wisdom teeth, gave me a med I was highly allergic to, and sent me back to my city by Amtrak. I got lockjaw. That caused me to drink blended food for 6 weeks, only for the lockjaw to finally relax and cause small clots to block both eyes, causing temporary blindness. Optic neuritis for 3 months. 2004 was a very rough year for me. Jeez, man. Forget the pain. Talk about bad luck. Glad to hear you're doing better. I mean, he didn't say that, but I assume. Story 3. Gallbladder stones almost killed me. Stones blocked a duct and caused an infection. I stumbled into the ER, and a doctor walked by, looked at me, and grabbed a stretcher. A minute later, they were putting an IV in each arm with multiple bags. They gave me different antibiotics as they didn't have time to test. Doctor said I would have been dead in less than 8 hours. They gave me so much pain meds that they had to call a pain specialist from another hospital. He said I would have to take me off the pain meds for 24 hours. That had given me enough meds to kill 2 horses, and I had to order to change meds. They had to get the other stuff out of my system. He gave me some super potent medical stuff. He said he saves it for special cases. I got to smoke it up on the roof of the hospital. No food or water for 7 days while I waited for emergency surgery. Had surgery and got overdosed on hard drugs during the procedure. Was moved to the ICU after surgery as they were having problems keeping me breathing. I was released the next day, and they gave me different pain meds to take. I got home and took the pain meds, had a severe allergic reaction. My skin was burning and blisters were forming all over. Within 2 hours, my testicles had swollen to the size of baseballs. I felt like light was burning out of my eyeballs. I could feel extreme burning nerve sensations anywhere my clothes were touching me. My insides felt like they were melting. Made it back to the ER and still had my old ID bracelet on. Saw the same doctor that admitted me the week prior. He looked at me, grabbed another stretcher, and the allergic reaction had caused another infection. Story 4. Gout is the absolute worst. I thought I knew pain until that day. The crappiest part is that pain doesn't come in waves. Whatever your brain does to alleviate pain is not strong enough to give you a break. It is just constant, indescribable pain in one joint of your toe. Mothers who've had it describe it as worse than childbirth. I remember sitting there delirious with pain, feeling sad about all the people alive right now and who have ever lived that had to experience pain on that level while everyone else went about their lives oh so comfortably. Like, how can you smile right now, person on TV, when pain like this is a thing that exists in the brain, can experience it, people are suffering? Cutting off one's own foot with a hacksaw and no anesthetic would be a relief. You just gotta soldier through the suffering and think about the difficulty of living without a foot. Story 5. Pilonidal cyst. This happened to me when I was 18 years old. I attempted to ignore it for a week, and it got so bad that I could not sit down. Idiot teenager move right there. I believe it came from a tailbone injury much earlier in life. I'll never forget the day I got it lanced. The doctor needed to numb the area before he lanced it. There I was, laying on my stomach in the exam table with my butt exposed to the world. The doctor tells me he's about to apply the LN2 spray, and boy, did he do that very liberally. So much so that it dripped down the back of my ball sack and it felt like someone stabbed my nuts with an ice pick. Still, the cyst was some of the worst pain I've ever been in. And then the constant packing of the gauze daily that my poor neighbor who was a nurse offered to do for me. Now, if that's not neighborly, I don't know what is. Story 6. Testicular torsion. I was 17 and didn't know what it was. I thought it might be blue balls. So I waited until it was the size of a grapefruit and in excruciating pain and had my mom take me to the ER. Half my testicle was dead, but I got a Demerol drip, and all was good after that. But oh boy, that pain was significantly worse than the kidney stones. Edit. Wow, I didn't realize there were so many members of the Twisted Nut Club. Like I said, mine happened at 17 and wasn't addressed until day 3. At that point, I couldn't sit down or drive due to the massive nuts, and it was preventing me from closing my legs. Anyhow, much of the tissue, or organ, was not savable, so the surgeon had to remove a fair amount. Now I've got some testicle left and also a bunch of scar tissue. It's gross, and I had low sperm count for a while, but now I've got 2 kids, so I don't know. Good thing is when they opened me up, the doc said he'd lasso the other testicle, my right one in this case, to the side so it wouldn't face the same fate as the dead left nut. But guess what? 2 years later, I woke up one morning and felt a familiar pain. I was boarding a plane that morning, but I knew what was going on, so I called ahead, had it operated on later that day. I probably should have sued the original surgeon for testicular negligence, but I never pursued it. Meh. Years later, about 10 years ago now, my wife and I were headed down the coast so I could race a 50K in SLO. Woke up with what I thought were butterflies and went through the whole process. Ended up barfing, passing out. My wife drove me, gingerly but still painfully, to the ER where they looked at me and said, well, he's either in labor or he has a kidney stone. Yep, a hefty 3mm stone lodged in my wiener. That crap was painful, but still nothing compared to the twisted nuts. Story 7. Trigeminal neuralgia. Excruciating stabbing pains triggered by any and everything. You can't touch your face, brush your teeth, eat, kiss, lay on your side. Nothing involving your mouth. It's like a relentless ice pick stabbing you or a million electric shocks. Sooner or later, you will want to die. That's why they call it the self-unaliving disease. Story 9. I woke up during my first wisdom tooth surgery to the dentist drilling the teeth, but still couldn't move. I managed to make a noise when she started scraping out the tooth chips. Turns out she didn't have anesthesia and used a high dose of Vicodin IV, and I had a high pain tolerance for pain meds because of recreational use with my buddies. I remember her finally noticing and looking into my eyes, and her face just went pale, and she looked so scared, I can't imagine what I must have looked like. Story 10. Had my wisdom teeth cut out. Halfway through one tooth, the medicine wore off. They couldn't renumb as it was halfway hanging out of my mouth, so I felt everything as they finished removing my wisdom tooth. Oh boy, there's a lot of dentist stories here, huh? I'm already not a big fan, but I have an appointment in a couple days, and this is not helping. Story 11. Period cramps that I had at age 16 to 17. They were worse than giving birth, appendicitis, and kidney stones. The pain would cause me to faint while sitting down in school, and I once had a set of cramps so brutal that I was screaming at the top of my lungs in excruciating pain, literally thinking I was going to die. It felt like my lower stomach was on fire, being stabbed, kicked, and twisted repeatedly while being stung by a million wasps. My dad was there, and this is one of the 2 times I've ever seen him cry or ever show fear. Story 12. I have endometriosis, so that's pretty bad. I ignored kidney stones because I thought they were just kind of moderate cramps. I ended up getting a UTI from passing the stones or something, and ignored that too, because urinary issues are common with endo. The infection spread to my kidneys and I had to be hospitalized, so that kind of sucked. I also have this left-sided pain, I'm not sure if it's my stomach or my spleen, but it hurts so badly sometimes that I want to curl into a fetal position while removing my flesh. LOL. Story 13. Necrotizing pancreatitis. Basically, my pancreas burst and the enzymes that usually digest the food in my stomach instead started digesting me. I was eating myself from the inside out. The pain is indescribable. It took a month-long stay in the ICU, during which time I died 3 times from sepsis, followed by 3 months in a hospital bed. I lost over half of my body weight, had to relearn how to walk, how to talk, how to eat. It's been nearly 2 years now, and I'm finally off my pain meds and just about recovered, but I will never be the same again. Story 14. Got my IUD put in and taken out. I love my IUD and am on a second one now, but it is ridiculous that the doctor didn't put me on some kind of pain meds. I'm glad more people are talking about the pain and advocating for pain management options. The pain only lasted a few seconds, but I almost passed out getting my new IUD put in a few years ago. I'm heavily tattooed in a painful spot and have several piercings. I have a high pain tolerance, okay? But that IUD nearly took me out. Story 15. Tooth abscess. Horribly painful. Not as bad as stuff like kidney stones, but it usually lasts longer, and you can basically do nothing to make it pass until the antibiotic takes effect. I almost destroyed my stomach with anti-pain and it didn't do crap. I hated it. After some days, the abscess finally broke, and it was one of the most relieving and disgusting feelings at the same time. Blood and pus all over the mouth, but hey, the pain stopped. Story 16. A lot of women and girls will understand this one, but period cramps. I'm not usually one to get horrific period cramps. They're usually bad, but not unbearable. Well, I was at school one time and sitting in my class in excruciating pain, sitting in my lesson in tears where I had to go to the matron, the school nurse, and she gave me some water and a sick bowl. After about 45 minutes, she sent me back to class, but I was in so much pain that I had no choice but to beg to go home. She didn't let me. I went to my next class and again burst into floods of tears since it was just so unbearable when my teacher advised me to visit the matron again, still not being allowed home. In the end, I went to my head of year where she called the matron, telling her I was to be sent home since I've never been like this in my 5 years of being at that school, meaning it was so strange for me to be in such an amount of tears that she was quite concerned for me. I've never been in such pain in my life, and I would never wish the way I felt that day on anyone. Story 17. First pregnancy. When the epidural wore off during the emergency C-section, my husband confirmed that my guts were outside of me when that happened. I screamed and they figured out what was happening when I tried to reach for my guts. There is a reason they strap you down and all your arms during a C-section. Or the second pregnancy, where I had carpal tunnel syndrome, which right after that C-section was so bad that none of the post-op drugs eased any of the pain. I couldn't lift my baby to latch her on to breastfeed. A nurse had to put the baby in place. I don't remember any pain from that C-section at all. Story 19. I had a heart attack and subsequent cardiac arrest in the hospital in 2021. The Lucas machine managed to revive me after 8 minutes of CPR. About 10 days later, in bed, the missus put her arm across my chest, just happy to have me home. I was lying on my back and she was pressing on the ribs the CPR had broken. It felt like a building was on my chest. I was in agony. I'm sweating just now thinking about it. But I couldn't ask her to move. I was just glad to be alive. And a week earlier, I knew she'd have given anything to have me back. I suffered that arm for 1,000,000 years. That was the worst physical pain I've ever experienced, but I was just glad to be alive to endure it. Story 20. I contracted spinal meningitis. In my late 20s, an infection in the brain. The hospital had me in a negative pressure isolation chamber for 2 months, and during that time I had full control over a button that would directly inject morphine into my IV line because the pain was so incredibly severe. Even after being discharged from the hospital, the pain went on for about a year. I could not sleep lying down because that made the pain worse, so I had to lean against the headboard, where I would simply moan the entire night. Basically, it was like having my head in a vice for about 12 months. Ironically, one of the few moments of relief I had from this pain was during the 3 times that they did a spinal tap on me, which is when they inject a needle about 8 inches long directly into the spinal column in order to extract cerebral spinal fluid. Most people consider a spinal tap to be an excruciating experience, but for me it was a relief because it relieved some of the incredible pressure on my brain. The doctors thought that was pretty crazy that I enjoyed the spinal tap. Aside from the agonizing year of pain, I also had to relearn how to walk and relearn how to speak. Amazingly, I made a full recovery, which was not expected. Story 21. Getting an IUD inserted. I had just turned 20 and never had kids, still haven't, and it felt like my cervix was being gutted with a knife. Then the worst cramps of my entire life came instantly and didn't stop for a couple months. On the bright side, I didn't have to deal with hardly any periods for the next 5 years. It was like I got all the cramping pain of the upcoming 5 years consolidated into a couple months as a trade-off to no periods for 5 years. Having no periods was nice, but the pain was not worth it, and I did not get another one. Story 22. Slipped vertebrae, not a slipped disc. Though that did happen at the same time. Was doing a workout and literally felt my entire lower back shift. Sitting was pain, lying down was pain, standing was torture, walking was miserable, sleeping was awful because my legs just lit up with all the nerve pain. It took many doctor visits, x-rays, chiropractor visits, and physical therapy, but I managed to recover decently without surgery, though it still might be required at some point in my life. Story 23. Retained placenta. Worse than kidney stones. Within a few minutes after giving birth, the doctor tugged on a cord to get the afterbirth to hurry and come out. Despite me having a birth plan specifically requesting not to do so, the cord snapped, which causes major bleeding. Now they had to get the placenta out ASAP, so I wouldn't bleed to death. But placenta hadn't been ready to come out yet. It can take up to 45 minutes, which is why I'd asked not to pull on the cord. The doctor started reaching inside me and using her hand to remove the placenta. Worse pain than labor, worse than any kidney stones, and I've had them. Seemed to last forever. I tried to crawl backwards off the hospital bed screaming. They had to tell me to stay put or die. Finally, another doctor came in with smaller hands and more experience and finally got it out. Lost a lot of blood and I could have died. Didn't get to bond with my baby for a while as I recovered. Was traumatic, like I was being SA'd almost because this was all against my wishes. Story 24. Finally, a question I can answer. I'm a chronic pain patient. I have degenerative disc disease, arthritis, bone spurs in both hip joints. I've also had gallstones and kidney stones. My gallbladder is gone now, but I do have kidney disease due to diabetes. I once had dental surgery and the dentist went a little deep. My tooth hemorrhaged and it triggered this awful facial nerve pain. I thought that was bad until I had repeated episodes of shingles that left me trigeminal neuralgia. That's bigger, badder facial nerve pain for the uninitiated. I have latent TB and some tumors in my lungs that need looked at, so I expect that I won't be that pleasant or comfortable. But none of these things qualify as the worst pain I've ever felt. About 14 years ago, I flopped on the floor next to my dog and just felt this awfulness happen. It was so far beyond pain that I have no words, and I've been on opioids, including morphine, for over 20 years. I tried to stand up, but I couldn't straighten up. I started to vomit over and over again. I thought I must have some kind of awful food poisoning because my gut hurt so bad, right? My fiance called an ambulance. I got to the ER and they started running diagnostics. They gave me a couple Vicodin. I didn't want to sound like I was a drug-seeking man or anything, but when the doctor came back to talk to me, I mentioned the Vicodin hadn't helped at all. He excused himself, and a few minutes later, a tech came in to hook me up to a pain pump filled with Dilaudid. That's when I started to worry. Food poisoning doesn't usually require a pain pump. They admitted me to a lovely private room. I didn't realize it was on the oncology floor. Then a different doctor came in to talk to me. She sat on the bed and held my hand. I had a huge ovarian tumor. When I hit the floor next to my dog, it torsed. That's what triggered the pain and nausea and the feeling that something awful had happened. I've seen the films from that day. The tumor filled my whole lower abdominal cavity, displacing organs. It was pressing on my bladder and preventing me from peeing, so I had to be cathed right away. Long story, even longer, I guess. I waited a few days for a really excellent gynecologist to become available. He gutted me like a fish, but got the entire 9-pound tumor out whole. It looked like cancer. It was supposed to be cancer. I've got Lynch syndrome, which is a genetic disorder that puts me at high risk for certain cancers, so I expected it to be cancer. I filed an advance directive with the hospital, including a DNR. Spoiler, it wasn't cancer. No cancer anywhere. But it was the worst pain I've ever felt. So far. Still, I consider it a bit of a miracle in my life, and the memory of the pain has faded over time. Too long didn't read. Big ouch. But hey, no cancer.